So, hello, welcome back to Devoxx 2013. We're here right after the Google keynote with Lars and Kasper.
Hey.
And welcome, guys, and congratulations. You've just announced Dart 1.0.
Sure did.
Fantastic news.
Yeah, I know you've been working hard on it, I'm pretty sure.
You spent the last 2.5 years working on Dart, so finally it's out, and it seems like it's well received. So fantastic new platform for writing web applications.
Right, so give me the big picture in terms of what it's trying to do, the fact that it's not just a language, probably, like the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch?
Yes.
It's going to be short.
First floor.
We only want one
Moving
thing.
up.
The only thing we want is to make programmers more efficient when they write web applications. And today there's currently some obstacles. We think the language is not structured enough for writing big applications, lacking of tools, and we're trying to solve that with Dart.
Okay.
And so Dart is a combination of a programming language, a rich set of consistent libraries, an IDE, and then we have the final piece. We have Chromium with Dart VM support. So that means that when you do development, if you change your code, you can try it right away. So no lag in tools when using it.
I think it's worth adding that in addition to having that native way of running Dart code, you can also compile Dart to JavaScript and run it across today's browsers.
Which would be probably, so you're talking about the developer use case, which is as fast as possible of a round trip, so you get immediate feedback on your changes, and you're more addressing the deployment story, which today probably will be more about generating JavaScript. But
it's a valid point. You need to deploy your application, and by no means we don't want to fragment the web. So it's important that when you translate Dart code into JavaScript, it'll work on all the modern browsers.
So let's drill down just a little bit on this. How good of a job are you actually doing generating the JavaScript? You know, how big, how efficient is the code that's being generated?
So the generated code is getting very, very good. We measure performance of the generated code and the size of the code, track it over time, and we made lots of good improvements there, to a point where generated JavaScript code emitted from the Dart to JS compiler is as efficient as handwritten code for a lot of cases.
And I probably should have mentioned that you guys are performance guys. I mean, you've been working on HotSpot, on V8, and the goal every time was really to enable new class of applications because the speed was so much faster. So
performance is good. People tend to like it. It's easy that way.
Perfect.
One thing I should add about performance is that if you increase performance in a platform, you enable new classes of applications to run on that platform. And that certainly happened on the web, where over the last 5 years, performance of the browser has just went through the roof.
Right.
And suddenly you see very complex and very animated applications running on the web, and it's just due to performance. When you give performance to programmers, they will use it.
Especially if you give them like 100 times performance improvement, that really changes the game, right? Things that you couldn't build before are suddenly possible to build.
Right. So this is 1.0 and you guys are talking performance already?
Why not?
No, great. I think it's a great feature. Performance is always a great feature. It tends to be a 1.1 or 2.0 feature. In this case, it's not, right? I mean, but
I think Kasper forgot to mention the Dart VM we have. We also have a VM for Dart.
Yes.
It's running twice as fast as JavaScript.
As JavaScript, yeah.
So it's not too bad. It's a good starting point. And we expect that over the next year or two to dramatically increase the speed, both on the translated code to JavaScript, but also on the native implementation.
Yeah.
So the end result is web applications, but not only. You can go, we'll probably talk about where else you can use Dart, but who is this really targeted at? Is it, what kind of developers? Is it JavaScript developers today, web developers, maybe server-side, trying to get into?
There's a lot of interest from people that actually have a background in Java, C#, that they want to try to find the good way of using their skills on the web for building web apps. We certainly see a lot of people interested there.
So what's worth mentioning probably is the optional typing.
Optional typing is interesting in that you can start out doing prototyping without being bothered by the types.
Right.
When you then get your structure into your program, you can start adding static types in your APIs. So at least other teams that use your code can see how it should be used.
Yeah, documenting the intent of your code makes a ton of sense when you work with more people.
It also makes it much more readable. So given that you're serious about doing web applications, your application will survive for a long time, and you need to maintain it and refactor it. And the more intent you have specified in the program, the easier it is to maintain over time.
I guess a simple description of that is that we found that people that use Dart for writing web apps have an easier time actually taking a sample and understanding what it does and finding relevant documentation from the type annotations than people that start from JavaScript, because you don't have the types in there to tell you what to look for in the documentation. So it's really helpful.
Yep. So other than types, it has everything you would expect from a modern language. So packages built in, lambdas, all of those things. You want to talk about maybe syntactics? Sugar, you've mentioned you've done a demo during the keynote.
Sure, I mean, so we try not to add too much syntactic sugar, but sometimes you just want to express your code in a concise, nice way without repeating yourself over and over again. So we've added a few things that make it easier to construct objects in a simple and sane way without repeating the field names and the parameter names all over the place like it's common in some other languages. So we've done a lot of things to just cut down on the boilerplate. So we like to call it like a ceremony-free language. You don't have to write tons of code just to get your stuff up and running.
And the feedback from the projects that are using Dart so far has been that it's more compact than Java, and it's very readable. So far it looks good. It seems like we've hit the sweet spot for what people is expecting.
What's quite impressive, I think, is that you guys have pretty much started building a real community around it. So because you have package management, you have people contributing those libraries in form of packages, you have people using it, early adopters. So tell me more about the community and how it's been used, and maybe what's Google's interest in all this, and is Google even using Dart or planning to use it?
Of course they're using Dart. So we are not this is not a toy project. We're doing it for real. And we're serious about making it a good platform for writing scalable web applications. One thing you have to bear in mind, before we had Dart, you would find big web projects that are using JavaScript plus comments, where the types were put in comments, and you would, based on these comments, try to figure out how the program was stitched together. And we're just taking the extra step in making a language that supports that. So for applications that are large and where you have several teams working on the same code base, this is a huge step forward. And of course, you know that Google is having a lot of big web apps, and we are serious about making sure that we can maintain these web apps over time. So yes, you will in the future see applications written in Dart from Google. So as well as from the outside, which is important too.
So there's at least one that's publicly talked about, and Brad Green from the Angular team was up on stage talking about how they build an application with, was it a team of 10, 12 developers in less than 6 months, and none of them actually knew neither Angular nor Dart.
So this is the interesting part. We have been very conservative in designing the programming language, so that if you had a background in a programming language like C# or Java, you could easily transition into using Dart without having any surprises. So one of our core goals when designing the programming language is there's no surprises when using it. We would like to have each construct in the language be so natural to understand as possible, so no magic was happening to the program. I think that is key to make sure that people like the programming language.
Yeah. Like, returning to your point about packages and community around Dart, it was very nice for us to be able to give a keynote, and like the demo that we wanted to show in there was actually based on like third party, you could say, like community code built by someone outside our team just using the Dart platform. And it's an excellent set of libraries we have out there that way.
So Angular is very popular. Tell me more about the work you've done with the Angular team.
So the Angular guys decided to make a Dart version of Angular, and that's a great way to write apps, a framework for writing web apps. But then all the logic in the program, you just specify in Dart. So
and then what kind of benefit do they expect from that? And are they getting it already?
Well, they're getting some of the same benefits as everybody else who's writing in Dart, right? More structure to your code. It's easier to document your intent. Everything's sort of built for writing larger, maintainable apps, and you certainly get that even in a setting where you're using Angular Dart. So there's really no difference between Dart and Angular Dart in that space. Angular solves the problem of data binding and those things in the Angular way, you could say, and then Dart takes care of making sure your application can scale up in the basic constructs that it provides.
So if you like the nice bindings they provide in Angular, then you can use Angular Dart together with all the logic written in Dart, and it works just great. So,
Yeah.
Great. So you can use Dart to build web apps. Can you use it for command line, server side? Does it even make sense? It's a general purpose language, so you should be able to do that.
It's a general purpose programming language, and we already have applications that are written outside the browser.
Yep.
Yeah, once you mentioned the Dart2JS command line tool. It's a compiler that takes Dart code and produces JavaScript. Of course, it's written in Dart.
And of course, it can compile itself.
Of course.
Oh yeah, so you can compile the Dart2JS compiler from Dart to JS and run on top of a JavaScript engine.
Good.
If you like that.
Yeah. If you're interested in that sort of thing.
Awesome.
But that's probably beyond the point. But this is one example where we have scaled sort of Dart to run outside the browser. So that works really well. Another one is that we have a performance tracking server system inside to track our increase in performance.
So that's server side.
It's all written in Dart. Yeah. And that's been running stable for 1.5 years now. So it even works outside the browser.
It does.
Very nice.
And there's more to come here. But I think it's important to focus on web applications now. This is the first area where we are trying to have consistent libraries and so forth.
Yes.
And when that all works well, we'll be happy to expand
Let's
outside.
focus on that. Let's do that really well. So you guys have had a lot of experience in virtual machines, HotSpot, V8. What were the challenges with Dart VM specifically?
It's sort of designed to be less challenging, you can say, than many of the other things. Like we know, like from ground up, how VMs work, so that helps when you design the language that you're trying to avoid some of the pitfalls that make it really hard to implement. So we're trying to make a design that allows us to make it go really, really fast. So you could say that it's been...
we designed it to make it easier for the VM implementer. So one thing that's we have been bothered by in other systems is that it's very hard to predict performance of an application. So the Dart programming language has been designed so that we can predict how well it performs on the VM. So the programmer, when writing a program, he sort of he can sort of estimate how fast it runs, and this is great. So
it's basically all about avoiding like performance pitfalls.
Yeah.
Like if you fall off that performance cliff in too many weird ways, it makes it really hard to reason about the performance of your code.
So for instance, to give a contrast, to make it more concrete, in JavaScript, right? You know, you can use an object as a dictionary, basically.
Right.
And if you, from the side, get hold of an object inside an application and start messing with it, suddenly the whole application runs slow.
Yep.
And that cannot happen in Dart. So we designed it in such a way that's not possible. And I think that will be great for developers because they can predict how well the code runs, and should not try to sort of guess whether it runs fast on one platform or the other. So this is good.
So performance, by the way, is not just the app running fast. It's also about the app starting fast. You know, in the web, that actually makes a lot of sense. So there's work, I understand, or around that in the Dart VM in terms of fast startup. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we have snapshots.
Snapshots.
So snapshots is a simple mechanism where you basically start up the program until you're about to execute main. And at that point, you take the whole heap and serialize it and put it into a binary format on the file system. And you can use that as a starting point when you start the application. And it's sort of, you get a factor of 10 startup in startup performance.
Right.
That means that if your application would take sort of a second to start up, now it's only 100 milliseconds.
Right.
And as soon as the Dart VM appears in Chrome, then you'll hopefully see a very snappy startup of web applications. Already now we're using these snapshots when starting up Dart2JS to make sure the tools have a fast startup in our toolbox.
Yeah.
Great. So when can we? Are you starting to talk to the Chrome guys to get it in? Of course, you have a Chromium build with the Dart VM, which is what you mentioned for the development cycle. Yeah. Next step is obviously to make it available to many people as possible, and people just realize that the app is running faster, right?
Precisely.
There's
you can think about the Dart VM inside the browser as an accelerator.
Right.
So it's not there, you'll pick up the JavaScript version. Talking to the Chrome guys, we are the Chrome guys. We are working in the Chrome team, so of course...
well, I'm sure you need to do some convincing before it happens.
The technology speaks
for itself.
It does, yeah.
Wonderful.
Right.
Well, on that note, congratulations again
Thank
on
you.
that 1.0 release. Where should people go to try it out?
Dartlang.org. Try it out. Send us the feedback.
There you go.
It's for you guys. So hopefully you like it and send us feedback so we can improve our system.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
As long as you promise to cut out the bad part.